Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have another great show for you tonight. We have Bingus Shoop, the author of a new book, The Sovereignty of Cannabis, The Green Soul. I just met Bingus here recently. We'll talk briefly about that in the show. So stay tuned for that. And first, as we always do, we'll bring out our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
They're so cute, dancing leaf to leaf. If you are a loved one, are looking for a doctor to help you get a medical marijuana permit anywhere in the United States, you can call us. We'll be happy to refer you to doctors in your community. Call us at 503 235 4606. That's 503 235 4606. Keep on working to restore hemp. Good night. Hey, welcome. I'd like to introduce Bingus Shoop, the author of The Sovereignty of Cannabis, The Green Soul. Thank you for coming on, Bingus.
Thank you for having me, Paul. I appreciate it.
It's great. I just learned about your book recently, and I just ordered it, but I haven't got it yet. You want to tell our audience a little bit about your book?
The Sovereignty of Cannabis, The Green Soul it's not your standard how to grow cannabis book that you find normally on the shelves. It's more about why you would want to grow and utilize cannabis in your life. And I cover the more spiritual aspect of the plant, the fact that it has been with humanity as a companion plant since the beginning of humanity. And it's been utilized to balance out this duality that we all are functioning within. So it kind of gives you a brief description.
When did the spirituality, the sovereignty of cannabis, when was it first published?
Published about a year ago. I have a website, thegreensoul.net, that I'm finalizing now. And it's starting to gain some traction. Writing books nowadays is not as, it's not as popular as people think. It's quite a bit of work to get the book out there and to actually get people to read it. You don't get approached by publishers unless you're a very affluent individual that can bring in millions of readers. But you can get a book published. And if you invoke a marketing program, you can actually start selling some books, which I'm almost finished with that program. It'll be another couple months to where it's in full force. So, but it's out there.
So do you want to describe kind of the details of the sovereignty of cannabis? I don't know if you know, but I'm a big proponent of individual sovereignty. I think we need to expand individual sovereignty in the face of the collective, in the face of AI and the billionaire class and all of that, and so I've been attacked for that by some people, George Soros no less. But
yeah, I bet.
tell me more about the concept.
Well, we, as human beings, are born into a lower density, a 3D environment that is basically a duality. And the human instrument, the body that we are all within, is divided. It has two hemispheres of the brain. Unfortunately, we are in a social system of separation, and it's held together by a variety of belief systems. And these belief systems we are all indoctrinated into from birth, basically. And we have to deal with a fair amount of post-traumatic stress as we go through life. I mean, the standard entering of Earth is you come out of your mother's womb, you're hung upside down and slept on your ass, and welcome to Earth. All right, so there's your first post-traumatic stress experience. And if you're a male born when I was in the 50s, you'll have a part of your genitalia removed. There's your next post-traumatic stress. And I had a rough childhood. My father was born in the early 1900s, excuse me, and so I had a very heavy-handed childhood, and I developed very severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which I didn't even know what that was at all. And when I became a young man, I think I was about 17, I experienced cannabis. And it activated my endocannabinoid receptors within the body, which are designed to balance this experience. It actually puts both of the hemispheres of the brain into balance. It allows the vortex that we naturally have to become activated, and for your soul to actually give presence in this environment that we're all walking around in. These are things that I cover in the book, primarily because we're all being controlled in this particular paradigm that we're in. Cannabis is the way, in my humble opinion, the way out, the way to understand who you truly are, why you're truly here, and to activate the essence of your soul. So a lot of people don't want to understand this. It has been demonized primarily because it goes against the indoctrinated mindset that we all learn growing up in this third dimensional environment. So I cover this, the history of cannabis, the fact that plants are sentient beings, that they can communicate with you. When I started growing cannabis, just the touching of the plant itself activated my endocannabinoid receptors. And if you've ever grown cannabis, at some point you will stand in front of your garden gazing at the cannabis plants that you're growing, and it'll actually capture you, and you'll be standing there for an hour and it'll seem like 5 minutes. And what happens at that point is you become interdimensional. You raise up out of the third density. You are more in a fourth, fifth understanding density than what you were originally born into, which is definitely a gravitated, enhanced third density. And you're in a system that, again, is a social system of separation. And we, as human beings, naturally want to unify. If you want to see the unity of humanity in action, just look at a video or a newscast of, let's say, a flood where people are coming out of their houses that you don't know. They're filling sandbags, working together in unity to save humanity. And that is the essence of who we really are versus the indoctrinated mindset that we are taught. So that was the whole idea of writing the book. It's really not much of a book. It's about 100 pages. It's probably more of a pamphlet, but I wanted to keep it short and concise because getting people to actually read books nowadays is kind of a challenge. So I don't know if that kind of gives you an overall view, but that's the reason I wrote the book. And it's my book. It's what I adhere to is in my deepest understandings. I try not even to use the word belief in my verbiage because it is the biggest problem that people run into. It's the biggest thing that separates everyone. And instead of, if we eliminated the word belief and just replaced it with understanding, instead of, well, this is what I believe versus this is my understanding, all right? It opens up a unity.
That's very similar to a friend of mine who passed away, a pretty famous Native American and activist, John Trudell, who was head of the American Indian movement for a while and became a poet and a songwriter. And he performed at our Hempstock Festival many times, but he often told us, you know, don't believe less and think more. That was his slogan. Believe less, think more. And right in the middle of believe is the word lie.
Yeah.
You know, be lie. You know, so it's and I try to do that. I try not to use the term belief and use think more. But understanding is about the same.
Yeah. It's everybody really needs to be understood. And the deeper your understanding goes, the more unity you will have, and the more balance you'll have in your life. And cannabis, for me, is something I do daily. I take a gel cap every morning. I smoke cannabis. I bake with cannabis. It used to be more in the human genome. It was in the grain that we fed our animals. It was used in salads. It was utilized a lot more. And then the demonization, I think those that like to rule over humanity decided that cannabis was a bad thing because it caused unity. It created balance. And it's pretty hard to control a human population when you're in balance, when you are thinking in a unified manner. And I encourage everybody to, you don't have to get high on cannabis. I don't think that is really the methodology of the plant at all. It just needs to be in you. It needs to activate the endocannabinoid receptors in your body, in your brain, and give you the opportunity to feel what unity is actually like. And so I'm a big proponent of cannabis. It's not always a popular stance. A lot of people will resist the thought of having cannabis as a balancing mechanism. But in this tightrope walk that we have through life, it is much like the balancing pole of your forward movement. We can't really go backwards, all right? We can try to understand the errors of our ways, but being in balance, all right, being in unity is a much better approach when it comes to the overall experience. And it gives you a companionship with other human beings that you wouldn't normally have. You had an instigation today in your facility where you had a homeless person that was blocking your doorway. And this is just another aspect of the human condition that we all have to deal with because of the social system of separation that we all are within. So if you're looking for a guide, The Sovereignty of Cannabis, The Green Soul, might be a good place to start. You can get it on my website, thegreensoul.net. It's only available on Amazon. I'm having trouble getting a cart because the banking system is really a part of the monetary system, and again, a social system of separation, does not want balance. They do not want you to be balanced and uh, at peace with yourself and other humans. They want us to be at odds with each other and create separation so that they can control and basically pick our pockets and get us to do what the overall wants us to do. So it's it's not a popular subject for a lot of people, I'll be honest. So
It's something that a lot of people are interested in, though. You see that people will, I remember the term that, cannabis sells newspapers and would draw people in to the media. It'll draw more eyeballs one way or another because people are pretty opinionated about it.
well, newspapers used to be made out of cannabis, so I can understand
Yeah.
that. And it was predominant in our lives, primarily because it's a companion plant for humanity. And it has a way of working its way in, and it's not going away. So
Yes.
those that are against it are really pushing against a rope that is never going to be successful. I
They've
don't.
been misinformed.
Yes,
You
indeed.
know, that's it. They've been lied to, and they believe those lies. And unfortunately, that's a fact all too often these days. So, before you became an author, what was tell us about your path to this insight?
Excuse me.
No
Um,
problem.
the I smoke cannabis, so have to clear my lungs occasionally. Uh, I I had a rough upbringing. I had I have severe post-traumatic stress. I didn't realize that. I was totally against cannabis. I totally bought into the lies. I was an athlete primarily because it was a way that I could get rid of my anger. I could play football and basically destroy people and, get rid of the anger that I held within myself at all times. Um, so one day I ran track and I ran the half mile and the quarter miler who was a senior, I was about a sophomore, I think, and he would disappear behind the dugout, which was next to the track, the baseball dugout, and he would smoke a joint before every race. And one time, back then we had fraternities in high school, and I was pledging for the fraternity that he was in. And he said, "Hey, come with me." And I did. And he pulls out the joint, and I'm like, "Oh," I'm just like, "No, man, I'm not going to smoke the devil's lettuce," And he goes, "Yeah, you are." I go, and so he had peer pressure over me. And he took a big draw and he says, "Here." He gave it to me and I acted like I was taking a hit and just blew it out. And he knew right away, like, "Nah, you're going to take a full draw like this." And he took in a huge draw of smoke. He blew out a bellowing cloud. And I went, "All right, I'm not going to get out of this." So I took a huge hit. My eyes watered. I virtually started coughing uncontrollably. I dropped to my knees and I had the most uplifting experience that I've ever had in my life. My body came into balance. Um, I got up and I ran the best race of my entire life. I broke 2 minutes in the half mile, which was kind of unheard of at that time. And I was I was basically hooked at that point. I learned, and back then all we did was really smoke leaves. We didn't even know what bud was. And so I learned that I could buy a pound. I could divide it up into what we called 5-finger lids back then. And you just put your hand up with a baggie and stuff it full of leaves and to reach 5 fingers, and that was basically an ounce. I became a weed dealer, um, and eventually, as I moved on in life, I ended up getting arrested and put in a cage for growing and dealing cannabis.
When did that happen? When was that?
That was the first time. The first time it happened was I was about 40, and I was selling my bud to a chiropractor, and she was using it to help AIDS patients. And this is one thing I always really liked about cannabis is that it was utilized as a healer, as a way to balance out the human instrument that we're all within. And but I was very ignorant about the system, laws, and what have you. And then as I was in holdup, I got arrested. There was a kid. I was very upset. I was pissed off, and I started mouthing off in holdup about I have rights and I'm innocent until proven guilty, and I just kept going on because I had post-traumatic stress. I didn't realize it at the time. And there was a young guy in there that started laughing at me. I wanted to just tear him a new butthole because I was so angry. All right. And he says, "You don't know." He goes, "You're guilty. You're going away." I'm like, "No." I go, "I have a voice. I can talk." So I got out of holding. I went in front of the judge and I started going off about how I was helping AIDS patients and da-da-da-da. It shouldn't be illegal. And she just looked
What
at
year
me.
was that?
So that was 30 years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
So
All right.
like 95.
In that area.
And
So
was that here in Oregon?
yeah.
Okay.
And she looked at me, took her glasses off, said, "Bailiff, take him away." And I ended up in prison. I didn't get probation. I didn't get anything because she knew that you need to be taught a lesson, boy. And so I did 18 months, best education I ever had.
You
About,
did 18 months in Oregon prison just for marijuana.
yeah, my first offense.
Uh-huh.
I
Was
should,
that in Washington County or was that in Multnomah County?
that was Washington County, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right,
They're a
so
little more conservative there.
I had
I
to,
got busted in 1986 in conjunction with the Oregon Marijuana Initiative when we had ballot measure 5 on the ballot. I ended up getting 5 years probation. Eventually, I violated my probation by going to school in China. I had permission from the probation office, but not from the prosecutor. I had to get permission from the prosecutor. And so I was importing hemp paper and hemp fabric, though. So, but I was only locked up for 5 months and 16 days for that probation violation in Oregon's institutions. I got moved around a number of times, but I was lucky in one regard that I got out about 13 days before our first baby was born, and all of our children have been born at home, 3 of them, and it's a good thing to be there for that.
well, home birthing, I think, is the best way to do
Yeah.
it.
So our babies were not hung upside down and spanked, and they didn't have genital mutilation either. So they want to do that, they can choose. I've got 2 boys. Uh, they haven't decided to do that. I don't think they're going to. But I didn't have any choice in the matter, obviously. But anyway, I sidetracked you. So you went into the system for 18 months and then you got out on parole, and how did that go?
Well, of course, when you get out, I was in the best shape of my life because I was working in basically you go out into the Oregon coastal range and you straighten out the forest. You remove
Oh, well,
logs. So I was in good shape. I came out and then you have all these fees that you have to pay. So I immediately started growing cannabis again and went back to giving supply to those that are in medical need. And that's what I do today as well. I came to your facility to see the doctor to maintain the license that I have to make everything legal. But I grow primarily and I breed cannabis to specifically target certain conditions like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. Um, there's a variety of things that once you bring the body into balance, uh, it's basically a cure. It's not so much a band-aid like the pharmaceutical industry will get you on their pill program for life. And so I'm not a big supporter of the system that we all live in. I've pretty much worked outside the system, growing cannabis off and on my whole life. Um, and when you're a convicted felon, back then especially, it was hard to get a regular job. So I always had a closet grow, I guess people would call it. Now I'm legal. I have a rotating garden, and I work on different strains, doing the breeding work. I actually worked for a company called Jupiter Seed about 4 years ago. They went out of business. A lot of the cannabis companies are not run by those that smoke cannabis. They're run by people that have money. And this guy that ran the Jupiter Seed, we made hemp seed. All right. But I worked in the breeding department and we had spectrometers where we could actually speed up the breeding process. A spectrometer weighs the different molecules, and you can get a much broader understanding of the plant that you're dealing with and direct it in the direction that you want it to go. And so that was a great experience for me, and that's what got me into what I do now. And I provide medically for those that mostly multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's and cancer patients is who I try to assist at this point. And thanks to your facility, Paul, I'm able to connect with a doctor that will verify and allow me to grow cannabis legally. And that's where you and I met. And very grateful for that, my friend. And I appreciate you,
Well, thank you.
exposing this to the world, really.
Well, I've been working on educating people about cannabis since I was a teenager. I first went to the White House smoke-in just a week after my 18th birthday back in 1978 when Jimmy Carter was president. And I actually moved to Oregon in '84 to work on what was called the Oregon Marijuana Initiative. And we gathered enough signatures and put it on the ballot, and were massively defeated in November of 1986 on ballot measure 5, which is 27% of the vote. But, that's how social change happens. You lose and you lose and you lose and you lose and you lose a few more times. And finally, if you're persistent and you're right, you can win. And so that was my pathway there. But uh, were you aware you were here in Oregon for those campaigns? Were you aware, like, well, in '98 when we had both stopping recriminalization of marijuana on the ballot, which was ballot measure 57, we gathered about 90,000 signatures to stop that from going into effect after Governor Kitzhaber signed it. and we gathered enough signatures to put ballot measure 67 on the ballot for medical marijuana. And so in the election in November of 86, no, 98, the election of 98, we won medical marijuana, ballot measure 67, with about 54%. And we stopped recriminalization with 67%. We won every single county in the state. And that actually stopped the national movement. They had recriminalized marijuana in several states. They never made any more progress after that, kind of fell apart. So how did those impact your worldview and everything, or can you say?
Well, I chose not. I was always in the background, all right, and I still remain that way as much as possible. I do not get involved in politics at all. I'm very appreciative of people like yourself that are moving things forward, doing the work on the ground to make it possible for me to do what I do legally. But I try not to shed the light on. I don't want. I've been in prison, okay? So I don't want to go back there. And I try to just stay in the background and help those that really need it medically. If somebody comes to me and they just want a bag to get high, I don't really, I'm not so interested in supporting that ideology. If you're really sick and you need balance, I'm your guy. And the emails I get from people literally make you cry on how appreciative they are of the plant and what it can do for them. And that's what keeps me going. Having a rotating garden is a lot of work. It doesn't give you the opportunity to break away. I had to shut my garden down a couple years ago. I went down to Medellin, Colombia, and I got stem cell treatment in my neck. I had broke my neck playing football, and it's been a very pain in my neck since. And
Medellin is a beautiful city.
It's the best thing I've ever done for my health. It took me about 5 or 6 years of saving money to actually get down there. I don't make a lot of money doing what I do, but it's not about that for me. It's more about the people that I help, and the feedback I get from them just elevates my spirit. And I had this idea about cannabis in writing the book for a long time. And I just sat down one day, and it took me about a week, and I pounded out about 100 pages of my thoughts and ideas on the subject, and I made the book. It's received quite well. I've had a lot of good commentary about it. It's not a heavy read. It's not going to take you forever to read the book. I don't have any copies here to show you, so I'm ordering more. So it's becoming more, yeah, thank you. It's becoming more popular, but it takes a while to gain traction as an author. And I've written another book about the belief system, and I gave it to my publisher, and said, I don't think anybody's going to buy this. And I said, you're probably right. So I kind of shelved it. It was more of a personal thing for me to just get it out on paper about the system of belief, and how belief is really a word, I think, that should be removed from the human language altogether. It's designed to keep us in separation. And it's better to have a deeper understanding about something than it is to have a deep belief about something. I believed that I was innocent until I was proven guilty. In my understanding, I recognized pretty quickly that that is not the case. If you get into the clutches of the law, they're going to pick your pocket until it's empty, and they're going to put you in a cage and treat you like a dog. So that's your lesson. And you need to believe that this will happen to you if you decide to propagate unity ever again to humanity, which I do. It became my mission at that point. And so I have a YouTube channel, Bingus 503. I have a Instagram page, Bingus 503. 503, of course, is the area code where I live, or used to live, in Oregon. And Bingus is actually a slang word for weed in the Urban Dictionary, and it's why I utilize it as my handle, my brand, or whatever you want to call it. And it's gaining traction, and I don't plan on stopping. I'm 70 years old, and I will do this until I die. And thankfully, because of cannabis, I'm still alive. And I don't think if I didn't have cannabis in my life, I think I would have died quite a long time ago. So I'm a big proponent of it.
Yeah, I had a friend, you might have heard of him, Jack Herer. Have you ever heard of Jack Herer?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, Jack Herer actually wrote the first edition of his book in my house here in Portland back in 1985, and was campaign literature for that Oregon Marijuana Initiative when he and I and a bunch of other people turned in signatures and put that on the ballot in 85. But he said, and I viewed it with some skepticism, that if you smoke cannabis, you'll live 3 or 4 years longer than if you don't use any cannabis at all. But now I know that's true, because it does promote homeostasis and that balance in all your bodily systems, whether it's your endocrine system, your nervous system. And so yeah, I've been inspired by cannabis from an early age, and it motivates me to do this show. This is show 1202 since 1996. And so so how did you start growing cannabis, if you don't mind me asking? Did you read a book? I mean, there's always a learning curve, and mistakes are made on the way till you get to be, I don't really like the term master grower. I
No.
just think an experienced grower is good, but that's a term you see used a number of times out there.
I've actually grown Jack Herer strain. Just throw that out there. But I got,
I just harvested some.
I just,
That strain was named by Ben Dronkers at Cincy Seeds in Amsterdam
really,
back in the 90s. And a lot of people think Jack was a grower. He was not a grower. We both grew marijuana about 2 or 3 blocks away from each other so we could finance putting marijuana legalization on the ballot. And so the story is out there now. But that's how we financed putting marijuana legalization on the ballot, really. And so but he had 3 little children when he was writing that in 85. And that was before cut and paste meant anything with a computer. It meant scissors and glue, cut and paste. And so the little kids were in his paperwork and messing up, the drafts of his book. So he asked if he could come to my house and work on it. So for a couple of months, he took over the ground floor of we were both growing pot about 3 blocks away from each other. And so he took over the ground floor of my house and put out that very first edition as campaign literature for the Oregon Marijuana Initiative. When I first saw it, though, it was an article in a yippie newspaper called Overthrow, and it was called the CMI, or the California Marijuana Initiative white paper. And that was the first time I saw it. It was only about 3 or 4 pages, but it developed out from there. But how did you become involved in growing? You want to talk about that?
My dad was much older, and so he died when I was in high school. And I had a stepmother that I couldn't really live with, so I moved out. I think it was my senior year, with my girlfriend in an apartment. And back then, to grow indoors, all you had were fluorescent lamps. And I got an 8-foot fluorescent lamp, and I put tinfoil around it to create kind of a reflective environment. I put it in the spare bedroom of the apartment where I was living, and I turned it on. I left it on 24 hours a day. The plants were growing. I actually had some Hindu Kush seeds that were given to me by an exchange student in my high school from India. He says, "Oh, you're doing that here," and I really wish I had those seeds again. But anyway, I was growing and didn't know what I was doing really at all. Wasn't giving it a photo period, but they were growing beautifully. And my girlfriend at the time, who was a bit OCD, she would go in every day to do laundry, and she would unplug the light. That I didn't realize she was doing this. She would unplug the light and do ironing for a good 2 or 3 hours a day. And then she'd plug the light back in so that I wouldn't know that she unplugged it. And then I started getting buds on my plants because she was creating a photo period. And I thought I screwed up. I thought, oh my God, what the hell is this? Because we didn't have bud back then.
You didn't have the literature to know.
I didn't know. And my dad had died, and he was not a proponent of cannabis. But my uncle was alive, and he was a breeder of irises, and he was well known. And I kind of thought that he was the younger brother. I thought that he may smoke cannabis. So I went to him and I said, "Hey, I got some cannabis plants that I'm growing." He goes, "Oh, really?" And I go, "They've got these little nodules with hairs and stuff coming out of them. I think I screwed up." He goes, "No, no, no, no." He goes, and I explained to him what was going on, and he goes, "Well, that's a photo period." And he educated me about how to grow cannabis. And it was, at that point on, it was just something I did because I had the knowledge from my uncle. I had the inclination to continue, and it was when you're growing it for yourself, you're not buying it and selling it. You're growing it and selling it. And if back then, if you were growing bud, people were amazed. They were just, "Oh my God, what is this?" And then they'd smoke it, and it was so much stronger that it became very popular. And it's just something I continued to do, and I still do today at with a much deeper understanding, I should say, than when I was 17 or 18, whenever I was doing that. And that's how it all got started for me. And thankfully, my uncle set me on the right path. He's long gone now, but he was one of the first guys to create a pink iris in breeding. So he was very into plants and horticulture. And so pretty much everything I know I learned from my uncle. And it doesn't take a lot of knowledge, really. It really takes the deeper understanding within you to be vigilant and assist other humans to balance out their environment. And that's really, I didn't really come to that conclusion until much later, is that what I was doing is providing balance to other human beings. And then the system, and this is why I never got involved in politics, was designed to keep us all separated. But thankfully, to guys like you and Jack and many, many others, it has propelled cannabis to where it is today, and it's way more accepted. I still get a lot of negativity from those. I don't walk around with a sign saying I smoke cannabis and I use cannabis in my life and I grow cannabis, because there's still quite a few indoctrinated individuals out there that think it's a bad thing. And what I would suggest is anybody that has issues, that thinks it's a bad thing, that they actually sit down, consume it in some way, shape, or form, and recognize the balance that enters your beingness. And I think it'll change your opinion immediately of the plant and why it has been a companion plant for humanity since the beginning of humanity. As far back as you can go ancient Greece, the doctors would write about cannabis use and the benefits. And it hasn't, the plant hasn't changed its capability. Humans are the ones that have demonized it and actually slowed down the process of balance within the human genome, I call it. We're all, as I mentioned, in a social system of separation held together by belief. And I just wish we could remove that word completely and just replace it with the word understanding. And that would invoke a lot more unity in humanity overall. And cannabis will take the prominent place in human society that it deserves once again. It hasn't always been demonized. It was revered back in the ancient days. It was really the only true medicine that they could come up with. So that's what I tried to do. I mean, when you told me you wanted to give me an interview, I was like, yeah, thank you, Paul, and thank you.
Oh, I'm glad to do it.
So.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's an interesting topic to me, obviously. I'm talking with Bingus Shoop, the author of The Sovereignty of Cannabis, The Green Soul. What is the concept of the green soul? That must have some definition in your book.
It's it's the activation of your soul. All right. Cannabis being green activates your soul. We all have the spark of the divine within our souls. A lot of us are not activated. We're walking around, I mean, without a soul, without the spark of the divine within you, you're not going to be able to walk around in this lower dimensionality at all. So it's there. But the social system of separation does its best job to keep it dormant, to not allow you to be in balance, to actually activate the soul within you. And once that happens, your life, I guarantee you, will change in one way or another. And I would really recommend ingesting cannabis, smoking it, getting it in the human instrument that your soul resides within, so that when your soul becomes activated, you'll be prone to unity versus separation. So that's kind of my ideology, and I will probably stick with that until I die.
Yeah, I have had the pleasure and honor to travel around various places in working with cannabis, and in 2016, the producer. Well, in 2016, I went to Japan and got to meet the family that has been growing hemp for the Emperor of Japan since 800 AD. Hemp, cannabis, is one of the two sacred plants in the Shinto belief system.
Yes.
All Shinto temples are decorated with hemp bundles and cloth, and in China, it's all part of their uh, funerary processes. Hemp is tied to honoring your ancestors. There's a system of mourning in China called the Wufu that was enforced by law, and that means the 5 levels of mourning. And so, if someone was your patriarch of your family, then you had to wear all hemp clothing, wear a hemp hat, hemp shoes, and carry a hemp staff for up to 18 months by law. And if you didn't do that, you could be punished by your community.
Wow.
So even today in communist China, they still burn hemp paper to their ancestors, hemp paper money and other items that they're sending to their ancestors. And they still wear a white hemp shirt to funerals and the hemp collar. But in traditional Chinese areas where the Communist Party's influence hasn't changed the culture, in Malaysia and Taiwan and other societies, they they still honor this Wufu, and they still perform the Wufu. I have some photos of the Wufu practices there.
Great information.
But what other things can you tell us your book? We've got about 10 minutes or so left here, I think. And so,
Well, my wife, I'm divorced now, but has Japanese heritage. So I was very drawn to the Japanese culture. When I was in high school, I used to wrestle. We had the Japanese team come and to our high school, and these guys were just incredible at the art of wrestling. And I had one of them stay with me. He was a lightweight. He was a 98 pounder, and I wrestled at 141, and he could just whip my butt in any format as far as wrestling goes. And I started getting educated by him, and he mentioned many times that he utilized cannabis. At the time, I wasn't smoking cannabis, and so I kind of like, really? You know, like, come on, really? And that's when I wanted to wrestle him. I'm like, come on, let's go. He just whipped me into shape every way. I was a pretzel in his hands. And then I really started studying the Japanese society, and the fact that hemp was very prominent. And I married a Japanese girl, and it really did influence me a lot. I didn't realize it was in China too. So you've educated me, Paul. I appreciate that.
glad to do it. Glad to do it. You know, so what are your plans now in terms of promoting your book or any other books or anything else you have to say here, Bingus?
The website is almost complete, thegreensoul.net. I want to just get the word out as much as possible, do more interviews like we're doing today. I utilize social media. Bingus is gaining traction as a brand name, I guess, for what I do. Bingus is a slang word in the Urban Dictionary if you look it up for weed, and that's why I utilize it as a name. When I first started doing social media, I was looking for a name, and when I would smoke cannabis with my sons who were living with me at the time, we used to call it Bingus just because it rhymed with bong. We would say, "Bing bong, it's time for Bingus." And I said, I need a single word name that I can turn into a brand name that encompasses cannabis. And my son eventually, he goes, "What about Bingus?" I'm like, well, let me double check. And I went to the Urban Dictionary, and sure enough, it was a slang word for weed. And I thought, all right. So Bingus became my identity. Even my son calls me Bingus now. It's kind of funny. And it caught on. And that's been about 7-8 years ago. And you can catch me on YouTube. You can catch me on IG. YouTube has me blocked, has me shadow banned. Cannabis isn't accepted still in the way that I want to portray it on social media. But those that are interested, if you go to my YouTube or my IG page, Bingus503, and you're interested, you can email me at bingus503@gmail.com. We can discuss your medical condition and get you on the right program. But I don't go out and I'm not a weed dealer, I guess you could say. I'm more of an activist to help humanity gain balance in a world of social separation. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But I sure do appreciate the opportunity to be with you, Paul, and your story is quite amazing. And I would recommend anybody that's watching to get a hold of Paul Stanford and all the good things that he does, and also get the book if you can.
All right. Well, thank you, Bingus, for being our guest today. So just look up the Green Soul, no spaces, thegreensoul.com.
That,
That it?
dot net, dot net,
.com.
.net.
.net.
Yeah.
I thought I made a mistake there. Thegreensoul.net. Well, thank you. You have a good afternoon and keep working too. Restore hemp.
Will do.
Cannabis isn't just a plant, it's a test. And most people are failing it. You've been told weed is either medicine or menace, a spiritual gateway or a mind-numbing escape, sacred or sinful. But here's the truth. None of those labels touch the core of what this plant really is. Cannabis doesn't conform to your beliefs about it. It amplifies what's already within you. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because in ancient traditions, cannabis wasn't a way to pass time. It was a portal, a tool of transformation, used only by those prepared to meet themselves fully. No filters, no distractions. Shamans, mystics, seekers, they used it to dissolve the ego, not decorate it. But today, the plant is everywhere. It's sold like candy, smoked like a trend, worshipped like a lifestyle. What was once a ritual has become routine. The sacred turned into spectacle. This video isn't about weed being good or bad. It's about what it does to your soul. Long before cannabis was ever rolled into a joint or packaged for profit, it was a key, handled carefully, reverently, and only by those who knew what door they were opening. At the dawn of civilization, it was never seen as a recreational pastime. It was a sacred tool, a substance aligned with the rhythms of spirit, used only in the context of ritual, fasting, prayer, and solitude. In ancient India, it was offered to Shiva, the god of destruction and transformation, the one who dissolves illusion so that truth can be born. His devotees, the sadhus, didn't smoke for fun. They smoked to die, at least, to the ego. The chillum wasn't an accessory. It was a sacrament. In Taoist alchemy, cannabis was blended with other herbs to refine energy, to cultivate internal silence, to trigger visionary dreams. It wasn't used to numb the senses, but to awaken subtle perception. Ancient texts describe it as a spirit ally, one that can sharpen insight or unbalance the chi, depending on the user's inner alignment. To the unprepared, it was not a gift. It was a test. Sufi mystics used hashish in ceremonies to dissolve the self in divine presence. But even among them, the plant was controversial. Rumi warned of intoxication that mimics awakening, but leaves the soul untouched. The plant was revered only when it led to annihilation of the ego, not amplification of it. It had to be held like a sword, with respect, or it would cut the hand that held it. Among the Rastafari, cannabis is ganja, the herb of wisdom, the healing of the nations. But it's not just smoked, it's prayed over. It's brought into reasoning sessions, where words and smoke rise together in a shared search for truth. It's a tool of communion, not escape. It is never separate from the liturgy. In those sacred circles, cannabis is not consumed to forget the world, but to remember the divine within it. And yet, here we are. In the modern West, we've turned the sacrament into a souvenir. What once demanded preparation, now demands nothing. You can buy weed in drive-thrus, light up in between texts, and scroll through meaningless content while floating in synthetic calm. The plant is the same, but the context has changed. And without ritual, cannabis loses its compass. When the ceremony disappears, all that's left is sensation, and sensation without direction becomes indulgence. What makes this dangerous isn't